Hi, Ismail. How are you?
Hi, Siddharth. I'm well. How are you?
I'm great, and I look forward to having this chat with you. My first question to you is please tell me about your journey to Legal Officer of Constitutional Programs, FW de Klerk Foundation, LLM International Law, the President of African Union SC, Chairperson of ActionSA Youth MP.
Well, thank you for the question. But before I do, I think I'd be remiss if I was not to greet all of the listeners who are tuning in. I have to say, Siddharth, I'm very honored to be here today. I'm grateful for the opportunity to share my journey with you. So thank you for inviting me. It really is a privilege to connect with such, I believe, a diverse and engaged audience. Also, just before I touch on the question itself, I'd like to speak about my childhood. Let's begin right at the beginning and its influence that it's had on my path thus far, if I may.
Sure.
So I'm not sure if you know, I have grown up in a very small, quaint town of Ermelo, Pumalanga. Now,
Okay.
Ermelo is a small town, but I think my childhood, Siddharth, was really shaped by the profound influence of my family's legacy, the values they instilled in me. Uh, I'm born into a family that was deeply rooted in business, spanning commercial property, hardware, textiles. I think I was, from a very young age, surrounded by examples of hard work, of integrity, and community service from a very early age. Now, a little bit of a background, my grandparents, as I'm sure many of our grandparents have, migrated from India to South Africa in the
Oh,
1930s. And
wow.
they, I have to say, incomparably to what we experience today, they overcame numerous challenges to establish a small store in the town and essentially to lay the foundation of our family's commercial success. And I take that as great motivation because their resilience, their entrepreneurial spirit served as a constant source of inspiration when I was a kid. And just to touch a little bit more on that, when I was a child, I would have described myself as being naturally observant. In fact, even a little introspective. And these are characteristics, traits that would later fuel my interest in law and politics, which is eventually where I'd be heading. So my formative years, Sadat, were really marked, I think, by a keen awareness of the socioeconomic challenges facing our community, facing my family, and matching that up with a desire to advocate for justice and equality. So education also played a pivotal part in my rise. I went to a primary school that I excelled in academically. I was driven by a thirst for knowledge, for a commitment to excellence, again, that was instilled in me by my family. And that's very important to mention, not to make my answer too long, but I think education cannot not be mentioned because success in school often lays a solid foundation for any person's future
Hmm.
endeavors. And that pairing up with extracurricular activities like speaking, like debate, like being a part of multiple teams, spurred and ignited my passion for leadership and for advocacy. In high school, this continued as well, I have to say, where, constantly excelling, constantly trying to be at the top of your grade, emerging then as a top orator, a speaker in the province, and eventually being at such a young age one of the best speakers in the country, I think not only boosted my self assurance, my confidence, my self esteem, but also sharpened my ability to articulate complex ideas and really to advocate for meaningful change. Now, finally, to answer your question, Sadat, you mentioned in your very succinct and well put together bio of me that I am the legal officer of constitutional programs and Action SA's youth leader. Let me touch on that. Let me touch on where I stand currently and hopefully where I'm heading. So let's begin with being the legal officer of constitutional programs. So my journey to becoming the legal officer of constitutional programs at the FW de Klerk Foundation has really been marked by a deep seated passion. That's really the key word, my passion for justice, and my commitment for upholding democratic values and principles. And after excelling in school, and thereafter, after going to the University of Pretoria, where I was recognized with numerous awards in the legal fraternity, I went out and actively sought opportunities that aligned with my dedication, with my passion to constitutionalism and to human rights. I've always believed in the sanctity of human rights. Then I have to also say my involvement with various student organizations, such as the Muslim Student Association, the Debating Club, these further sharpen my leadership skills. They laid the groundwork for what I would later do in life. I've also been, just to touch back to your bio, president of the African Union Student Commission, where I led numerous youth initiatives for empowerment and policy reform. And I've also been heavily involved with Thabo Mbeki's foundation and with President Thabo Mbeki personally and professionally in helping bring about change to the youth diaspora in this country. I also just want to touch on the LLM that we spoke about, the international law aspect of that as well. After having completed my LLB degree at the University of Pretoria, I introspected as I was taught as a child to look within to make a change without. And looking within, I paired my talents to what's going on in the world around me. I realized that the problems, the deep seated problems facing South Africa, are not just endemic to South Africa. These are problems, there are problems that affect the entire world. How to make a difference? Well, I looked within and I saw that my thirst for knowledge has not yet been quenched. I pursued an LLM, a master's degree in international law. That was my natural progression. This came from a fascination with geopolitics and with international affairs. I was particularly inspired by figures like Henry Kissinger, by figures like some of the great foreign ministers at the time. And I really immersed myself in the complexities of international legal frameworks. And I gained a comprehensive understanding of how laws operate on a global scale. So that's where I stand currently. And also, hopefully not to make it too long, I am the chairperson of ActionSA's Youth Forum in Mpumalanga. And I have to say with a full and grateful heart that I'm a prospective member of parliament. I stand as being rated 11th on the national list for ActionSA and number 1 in the province. So hopefully in 3 days' time, we'll revisit this interview and I get to stop calling myself a prospective member of parliament and indeed have my sign sealed as one of the youngest members of South Africa's National Assembly.
Oh, that means I might see you on TV then, being part of all the politicians, if I'm correct.
Well, you'd already be seeing me as a part of a lot of the politicians currently, but I think that politicians today have gotten a bad name, and I blame the celebritization of politics. Young people view politicians as being celebrities and often get into the political field for the wrong reasons. Go into politics striving to be like some of our politicians who do little, talk a lot, and show off a lot. And so when you say that you'll see me on TV as one of the politicians, well,
No, I
certainly
wasn't meaning. No, I wasn't meaning it like that. I was meaning in terms of I'll see you with the like with the run-of-the-mill politicians such as the Steenhuisens and Ramaphosa, stuff like that on TV. That's what I meant. You'll be a part of the union buildings. That's what I meant. And I meant like the union buildings and all that. That's what I was referring to.
Absolutely. That is essentially the goal, but really what we're striving towards is not just being there, but really being there and making a difference at the same time.
Of course. Okay, my next question to you is, who are the people that inspire you in these respective spaces you've been in?
So I think this question, Siddharth, really touches on role models. And role models are particularly important because role models inspire you and bring out the best in you. And young people need role models. I think it's such a shame that we live in an era, in an age, in a country where role models are far to be found. But if I have to mention some of my role models who've really fueled my rise, well, first and that list would be Herman Mashaba, the leader of our
Mm.
party. I think President Mashaba, as we call him, epitomizes the qualities of visionary leadership, unwavering dedication, and principled action. And when I look at his journey and try to emulate his journey, which is pretty unbeatable, his journey
Mm.
from a humble background to becoming a successful entrepreneur, and then being humble enough to put his business interests aside and go into politics, is a testament, I think, to the transformative power of perseverance and hard work. And I think what really sets Mr. Mashaba apart from everybody else is challenging the status quo, looking at a country that clearly is facing significant challenges and challenging the status quo of the day to say that these challenges were caused by a group of people in elite positions and we cannot continue on that trajectory any longer. That was admirable. It took a lot of courage and it inspires a lot of young people. Uh, Mashaba's foray into politics, I have to say, showcases his leadership, his courage, his efficiency of being able to rise so high so fast is something that really inspired me. I also just have to say, Siddharth, that I have been particularly lucky not to have just looked at role models on TV, as you say, or have heard about role models, but I've also been very lucky and fortunate to have worked with some of the role models who've inspired my rise. I've had that opportunity in life as well. And I can mention some of these. President Thabo Mbeki, he's been a role model to me. His commitment to an African renaissance, to bringing about the best that South Africa can offer, to placing South Africa on an international stage, his profound understanding of international affairs, that has also shaped my views on leadership and diplomacy, and also really sparked my intrigue in international law, which I gained my master's in. And so, having worked
Oh,
with him, yeah, having worked with the Thabo Mbeki Foundation, that has been an honor for me. It has been a privilege. It allowed me to witness firsthand the dedication to promoting peace, to promoting stability across the continent, and to the intricacies of what goes into good governance. I think young people can learn a thing or two from him. I should also say that another role model of mine has been President F.W. de Klerk. And
okay.
I suppose you could have guessed this answer because I do work at the F.W. de Klerk
Hmm.
Foundation. President F.W. de Klerk is somebody who I believe receives tremendous acclaim and acknowledgement for all of the good that he's done for our country. His legacy as a maverick who played a pivotal role in dismantling the apartheid regime and establishing South Africa's democratic dispensation often goes unacclaimed but continues to inspire me. And I think that his efforts in facilitating that transition is something that we can all learn from to understand that in politics, as confident as you may be, you still have to leave a little bit of room for compromise. He birthed us the constitution that we have today. And without that constitution, we in South Africa would have been but a lawless society where anyone would have had uh, would be able to go and do anything that they think they could have without the real proper legal framework in place. So these are some of my role models. And I think if we want to look at a more personal level, I think I'd be remiss as well to not mention my father, who's been a great role model in my life. I mentioned this in the intro. His expediency, his
Hmm.
guidance, his ability to instill in me a sense of what integrity means. His work ethic is something that I looked at from a young age and tried to emulate. My uncle as well, who's been somebody who inspired me through his profound knowledge of anything and everything, taught me that one has to have a keen insight into what's happening, not just in one's own field, but certainly in every realm of importance, because you might find yourself in a position where you have to work on a field, work in a field that you know little about. And so you
What has been your highs so far in these spaces?
You know, when one talks about highs and lows, I think you again have to do a lot of introspecting and you have to dig deep into
Hmm.
your own past. And in so doing, be confident enough to admit that one has had highs and one has also had lows. I've been very fortunate to have had many, many highs. Let me touch on some of them. I think that one of the most rewarding experiences I've ever had in life was being able to work in the FW de Klerk Foundation and thereby work in Parliament, because what my role offers me is to sit in Parliament practically every day and to analyze legislation and compare legislation with human rights, with the Bill of Rights, with the founding values of our Constitution. I think very few young people have such an opportunity, not only to be a part of a great organization, to be a part of a great team, but also to have first-hand insight of what's happening in our nation's executive legislature. So that has been a critical highlight of my life, without which I certainly wouldn't have been able to speak from such a knowledgeable perspective. And additionally, I've also had the profound privilege of being able to pursue a master's degree. Many young people don't pursue education or seem to prioritize anything else but education, take education for granted. And I think education is critically important. In my instance, I mentioned having that thirst for knowledge, pursuing that master's
Mm.
degree put me with that knowledge I need, but also enabled me to debate with people in the field who've been very significant, made very significant contributions in the field. So when you sit down with President Thabo Mbeki and you speak about diplomacy on the African continent, by having this advanced knowledge through your master's degree, you're able to formulate and articulate uh, answers to complex problems and have a comprehensive debate on how to solve the critical issues facing us. Those have been some of my highs, but my highest high of all certainly has been working alongside visionary leaders like President Mashaba, who really have been at the forefront of efforts to bring about change in South Africa. It is an enormous privilege that I would never undermine, to be able to work with people who every day in and day out, whether it's raining or snowing, go out and attempt to make a change, and not just do that, but entrust you, endow you with a responsibility, in my instance of being chairperson of the youth forum, that really has allowed me to mobilize with young people, to mobilize, to engage with young people um, in the political process and to advocate for policies that address these critical issues facing our nation. So that has been a very uh, big highlights of my life. And certainly now, standing on the precipice of being elected as one of the youngest members of parliament in our nation's history is not just a highlight, not just a privilege, but something that I think could have only been possible with the prayers of those around me and with the blessings of God Almighty.
So, what have been the lows, if any?
Well, there have been lows, because at the end of the day, we're all human,
Mm.
all fallible, and as high
Of
as your
course.
highs can be, I spoke about being on the precipice of being elected as a member of parliament. I'm reminded often by the words of Henry Wordsworth, who once eloquently and very elegantly said, he stood on pinnacles that dissolved at the precipice, reminding us, I think, that all of us, no matter how much we achieve in life, have to factor into the equation that there might at certain times be certain setbacks, and one has to prepare themselves for these setbacks. In my life, the low that I can mention was the COVID pandemic, which I think for all of us took a tremendous toll on our personal lives. It altered dramatically the course of my plans and my daily life. As the pandemic spread, I had to geographically move. I had to leave Pretoria, where I was studying, and I had to relocate back to my hometown of Ermelo. And that was a significant change for me, because this sudden relocation was a very difficult adjustment. To give you an idea, I had to navigate this transition from a bustling academic and political space and come back to a more isolated surrounding. But the pandemic, despite having disrupted many of my initiatives, despite having halted my face to face engagements, and despite having posed all of those difficulties to my work routine in itself brought about opportunity, because I think that that's the lesson young people can learn from the challenges that afflict them, that no matter how difficult times may seem, there always is a silver lining. So this period of upheaval presented the opportunity for me, being back in Ermelo to reconnect with my roots, to go back to the drawing board, to engage more intimately with the local community around me. It brought me closer, I think, to the everyday struggles that people on the ground experience, to the aspirations that people have, and the direct interactions and the grassroots engagement in my hometown really, I think, enriched my understanding of the local socioeconomic space and provided me with a more nuanced perspective on the issues affecting my hometown, my community, and certainly my province. So, despite those challenges brought about by COVID, I was still able to make significant strides in my province during this time. I was still able to continue my advocacy, to continue my legal work, to leverage digital platforms, making use of the social space, to stay connected with my networks, and to still advance my initiatives. So I think the pandemic really underscored the importance of resilience and adaptability, qualities that I continue to hone to this day. Resilience and adaptability are critically important, even at the lowest of times.
What are your plans for this year and beyond?
It's a tough question because one can plan, but those plans often won't come to fruition unless you act on those plans. And please mind my pun when I say act, I am subtly referring to action SA. And of course, one has to always place faith in yourself, confidence in yourself, but also place deep faith and deep confidence in the team that you have, the people around you, but more than anything, in God Almighty, because nothing is possible without His plans that He has bequeathed upon you. If He doesn't mean it to be, it certainly won't be. But let me directly answer your question, and not to, as some of the other politicians would, divert away from the actual answer. So, my plans for the year and beyond are very ambitious and, again, deeply rooted in my passion for justice, my commitment to equality, to the prosperity of all South Africans. We are now 3 days away from the upcoming national and provincial elections. My immediate goal is to ensure a decisive victory for Action SA to emerge as one of the largest and most influential political parties in the country. Winning a seat in parliament is a crucial step towards obtaining this objective, which would, in essence, allow me to be a leading voice in the justice and international relations spaces within our legislative body. Now, in Parliament, I then intend to focus on advancing those policies that our party has promulgated that uphold these principles of constitutionalism, ensuring that our legal frameworks protect the rights and freedoms of all South Africans. My goal is to also work tirelessly on our international relations. South Africa has become, to a certain extent, a pariah state in the eyes of many in the world. And if I can play a small but significant role in changing that dynamic, in changing that perspective, I would consider it a feat well done. But that's Parliament, and that's left to be seen. And on that note, I urge voters to go out in their numbers and vote. Vote with their hearts, vote with their consciences. But beyond Parliament, beyond my parliamentary ambitions, I have long term plans in Action SA to help grow Action SA into the single largest party in the country. Now, I know it's a tall order. I understand that it's a very difficult thing to accomplish. But I do believe that under the visionary leadership of Herman Mashaba, we are dedicated to transforming South Africa into a corruption free, crime free nation. Our goal is to create a South Africa that is the envy of every country on the continent. Our goal, Siddharth, is really to create our country into the strongest economy in Africa and one of the most market friendly economies in the world, which would, in essence, inevitably benefit every single South African. And if I can add to my lofty list of very ambitious plans, my ultimate um, ideal is to see Herman Mashaba become president of the Republic of South Africa. Herman Mashaba becoming president of the Republic of South Africa, supported by a strong and capable and dedicated cabinet, where together we will all work to dismantle the systemic corruption that plagues our nation, where we will implement effective strategies to make South Africa better and foster an environment that is conducive to economic growth and job creation. And hopefully, Siddharth, one day when this vision of mine is realized and when you and I sit back down for another chat, hopefully in a future that sees President Herman Mashaba alongside an ActionSA cabinet and a South Africa that is truly the envy of the world, perhaps then you'll ask me the same question, and my answer will be then that my ambition is for President Mashaba to pass the baton down to the younger generation, ensuring a legacy of strong, principled leadership. Um, so that's my vision for the future, and it's a vision that I think is very bold, very ambitious, but very achievable, and
Of course.
not just achievable, but I think will certainly come to fruition if we all put our hands on our hearts, put our minds on the ballot paper when we're casting our votes, and ultimately ask God's blessing for a better future.
Before I get to my final question, so are you saying that you wouldn't mind being a future president of South Africa through ActionSA?
You know, I think that when you speak about being a future president of the Republic of South Africa through ActionSA, the last part of that sentence is more critical than the first part of that sentence. When you're part of a collective of very competent and capable leaders, when you're part of a cohort of leaders that are all strong, all visionary, all extremely hardworking, then certainly being president falls lesser down on your list than seeing the party rule South Africa, because you know that the interest of the nation always comes before any personal ambitions.
Of
But
course, yeah.
again, but again, before I divert from your question in a too politically orientated way, yes, one of the ambitions, one of the visions, one of the ideals, one of the dreams is to be president of the Republic of South Africa, but only to do so through the channels that ActionSA would allow me to, because
Of course, yeah.
ActionSA's vision for the future, ActionSA's policies, ActionSA's goals and ambitions align with mine. And I don't think I'd be lying. I don't think I'd be very metaphorical if I say that if you cut me open, you'd find that my blood certainly is green.
Yeah, not to sound unintentionally racial, but if that were to happen, you'd be, I think, the first Asian to be president of South Africa, and that would be very exciting.
Absolutely. And to touch on that, it is exciting. But we've seen this trend happening in countries across the world. We have Rishi Sunak as the Indian Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. We have Sadiq Khan, who is the first Asian mayor of the city of London. In other countries in the world, we see minority groups assume leadership positions and climb the ranks. But I think too much emphasis is placed on race. And I know you didn't mean it in that particular way.
Yeah.
But
no, of course not. Yeah.
But to touch on that, this is why ActionSA is not a better party for the future. It's certainly the single best party that South Africa has right now, because it emphasizes merit-based appointments over racialism.
Yeah.
When you assume a leadership position in ActionSA, you assume that position not on the basis of your race, but on the basis of merit. And when ActionSA assumes on merit the position of being the ruling party of the country, and if you were hypothetically to be the leader of the party and therefore the president of the country, you would be doing so on a very merit-based perspective, merit-based stance. And the people of South Africa can be rest assured that no matter the color of your skin, real change will be brought about in the most competent and efficient way. And it's something I'm greatly looking forward to in the future.
Okay, so my final question to you is, what are your words of inspiration for people that want to be in the spaces that you've been in, sorry. Yeah.
Well, I've been in numerous spaces, so I think this warrants a very straightforward but also a succinct answer, an answer that speaks to the youth. I've been in the spaces of law, of politics, of activism. And as we mentioned in our chat, these have all been very rewarding to me. I've had a very upward trajectory, one that I can be very grateful for. So, to those aspiring to make their mark in these particular spaces, I can offer a few words of inspiration and guidance from my own experiences. So, here's to the youth. Firstly, recognize that the path to success is seldom straightforward. It is essential to embrace the idea of incremental progress. Change doesn't happen overnight. Success doesn't happen overnight. There is no such thing as a get rich or get famous or get successful quick scheme. They simply don't exist. And there's a very beautiful quote that I'd like to mention. We have not wings. We cannot soar. We have but feet to scale and climb, little by little, more and more, the cloudy summits of our time. What that means is that we have to understand that meaningful change, long lasting change, a strong, solid impact is only achieved through steady, persistent, perseverant effort rather than dramatic leaps. So, to the young people, please embrace and celebrate every small victory because every step forward brings you closer to your ultimate goals. That's the first piece of advice. The second piece of advice is that dedication and resilience are key. That's why I've been emphasizing that in this chat with you. We'll all face tremendous challenges. We're all human beings and we're all fallible. None of us will have a trajectory that has no challenges at all. But ultimately, you have to realize it's your unwavering commitment to your principles, to your vision that will see you through, and your ability to adapt, to be flexible, and to navigate those complex challenges that will get you every day a step closer to your dreams, to your goals, and to your ambitions. But we've spoken a lot, Siddharth, today about education, about my personal education. But I want to tell the young people of South Africa education and continuous learning are vital. It is imperative that young people equip themselves with the knowledge and skills in whatever field that will empower them to make informed decisions, to be able to articulate themselves in a more crafted way, and to be able to advocate more effectively. Now, while my academic pursuits and my degrees, my specialization have been instrumental in shaping my understanding of the world and enhancing my ability to contribute meaningfully, South Africa needs good scientists, good doctors, good engineers, good architects. And that can only happen through education. Education gives us, in the words of one of our former leaders, the building blocks that we need to build a better world for ourselves. And Sadat, you've also spoken today about role models and mentors and people who've touched our lives. And if anything, I hope that one thing that I could have done in having this conversation with you is having inspired at least some young people. But that's another piece of advice for me to give to young people. Please surround yourself with mentors and role models who continue to inspire and guide you. I have been very fortunate to have worked with many of my own heroes, including President Thabo Mbeki and President F.W. de Klerk, and their leadership and their sense of dedication inspired me to continue on my trajectory. My father and my uncle, they've been um, pivotal pillars of support. They've offered me advice, invaluable counsel, motivation when I seemed to be at my lowest point. So surround yourself with people who give you the encouragement you need, but also with people who are able to take you from where you are to where you want to be. And lastly, you have to deeply engage with your community, with the people around you, with the ordinary layman on the street. Because it's one thing to be influential in a niche, nuanced space, but it's a very different thing to be able to be sociable and to go out and make a real difference in the lives of others. So spend time reconnecting with your roots, when you asked me what my lows were, COVID had been a low for me. I mentioned it specifically and particularly so as to encourage the youth that even in your lows, you can still find opportunity to grow. Because of COVID, I was able to come back home to my province and reconnect with my roots and spend time with the people who matter most to me and spend time with the average people on the street who now I hope to make their lives a little bit better. So be on the ground, be conscious of what's happening around you, never take your eye off the ball, be confident in yourself, stay true to yourself, and believe in the power of your own voice and the ability that you have to effect change. Each one of us has the potential to contribute to a better society, to a better life for ourselves and for our family. Be passionate about what you're focused on, be passionate about something at least, and combine that passion with perseverance and with strategic action, because only with action can you drive significant change. So stay true to
Thank,
your values, keep pushing forward. Remember that every step counts. Remember that no matter how small your efforts, each effort brings us closer to achieving our goals and to reaching those cloudy summits of our time.
thanks so much for your time, eh?
It really has been a pleasure chatting with you today, Siddharth.